My name is Sarah Thompson. I'm a 38-year-old nurse living in Millbrook, a small town in America with a population of just about 5,000. The town is surrounded by lush green hills, but contrary to its peaceful appearance, my home life was far from tranquil. Every morning, I head to the local general hospital. Work at the hospital was the only place where I could escape the tension at home. Good morning, Nurse Thompson. Looking forward to working with you today. Hello, Jake. How are you feeling today? Engaging in such conversations, I try to immerse myself in work to forget about my family problems. At home, a complicated family dynamic awaits me. My husband, Michael, runs a small law firm in town. We've been married for 10 years, and while I thought we were happy at first, our relationship has now grown cold. Sarah, I'll be home late again today. All right, Michael. This exchange is the extent of our daily interaction. Our 6-year-old son, Ethan, is the only hope in this house. He has a special ability. Mom, Grandpa says everything will be okay. Ethan can hear the voices of the deceased. This ability was the only consolation for our family. The biggest problem in this family is my mother-in-law, Elizabeth. She's nagging, critical, and a constant source of stress for me. Sarah, your cooking is always so bland. Ethan's grades are slipping. Are you even paying attention? Elizabeth's words always undermine my confidence. She doesn't accept Ethan's ability either, calling it abnormal. That child is saying strange things again. You need to discipline him properly. The thought of these days continuing endlessly filled me with despair. But life often has unexpected turns, and our family's fate was about to change dramatically. My relationship with Elizabeth was rocky from the start. When we first got married, instead of welcoming me, she maintained a constantly critical attitude. Sarah, are you really fit for this family? Being a nurse isn't much of a career, you know. Hearing such words daily gradually eroded my self-esteem. My married life with Michael was also greatly affected by his mother's presence. At first, my husband would defend me, but gradually he started taking his mother's side. Sarah, Mom has a point. Why don't you try a little harder? My husband's words deeply hurt me. The feeling of isolation within the family grew stronger day by day. The only solace was my son, Ethan. His special ability was a great comfort to me. However, Elizabeth found this ability creepy and started calling Ethan abnormal. That child is saying strange things again. It's not normal, you know. Still, surprisingly, Ethan liked his grandmother. Grandma is actually a good person. She's just suffering from something in her past. Ethan's words left me with mixed feelings. Was he sensing something about my mother-in-law that I couldn't see? As these days continued, we suddenly received news of Elizabeth's accident. Her car had apparently fallen off a cliff. Sarah, Mom's been in an accident. Michael's voice was trembling. I was hit by a wave of complex emotions. My feelings towards the mother-in-law I disliked mixed with the sadness of losing a family member. Grandma is calling, Ethan said. But she seems scared. His words gave me an odd sense of unease. As funeral preparations began, I noticed a strange atmosphere among the relatives. Instead of being grief-stricken, they seemed to be plotting something. What's going to happen to Elizabeth's estate? Naturally, Michael as the eldest son will inherit it, right? Such conversations were taking place here and there. I felt angry inside. These relatives talking like this when we've lost a loved one. And Michael, silently listening to it all. On the day of the funeral, I was overwhelmed with anxiety. Even Ethan was acting differently than usual. I had a feeling that something significant was about to happen. On the morning of the funeral, a heavy atmosphere enveloped the entire house. As I adjusted my black mourning dress in front of the mirror, I was battling complex emotions inside. My relationship with Elizabeth had never been good, but her sudden death had shocked me deeply. When we arrived at the funeral home, relatives had already gathered. Their expressions showed something other than sadness. I suppressed the growing anxiety in my chest and exchanged greetings mechanically. "Sarah, where's Ethan?" Michael asked. "He was here just a moment ago." I frantically started searching for Ethan. I found him near the altar, staring into space and muttering something as if he was conversing with someone. "Ethan, are you okay?" I called out to him, and he suddenly turned around. "Mom. Grandma is saying everyone's an enemy." Ethan's loud voice drew the attention of all the relatives. I hurriedly embraced him, trying to cover his mouth, but Ethan continued. "Grandma says to give you this." Saying that, Ethan handed me an old book. It looked like Elizabeth's diary. With trembling hands, I started to turn the pages. The contents were unbelievable. Elizabeth's death wasn't an accident, but a planned murder. And behind it were Michael and the relatives. "Sarah, what are you looking at?" Michael's voice brought me back to reality. His eyes held a cold light I had never seen before. Instinctively sensing danger, I took Ethan's hand and stepped back. "It's nothing. I'm just going to get some fresh air outside." Suppressing my shaking voice, I took Ethan and left the funeral home. Then, I called the police from the car. "Hello, police. While I was explaining the situation on the phone, a police car arrived. The officer who got out approached us as if he already understood the situation. "Mrs. Thompson." "Yes, that's me. You need to leave immediately. It's dangerous here." I was speechless at the officer's serious gaze. He continued. "We've been investigating this case for a while. We received an anonymous tip from your mother-in-law. But we didn't have enough evidence." At that moment, we heard angry shouts from the funeral home. Michael and the relatives had come out looking for us. "Sarah, where are you?" Michael's voice no longer held any of the gentleness of a husband. "Hurry," the officer urged. "I'll hold them off. You two get to a safe place." I hugged Ethan tightly and jumped into the car. In the rearview mirror, I could see Michael and the others confronting the officer. Mom, I'm scared. It's okay, Ethan. I'll protect you. This is where our new life begins. Following the officer's advice, we hid in a motel on the outskirts of town. Ethan had fallen asleep, exhausted. With trembling hands, I opened Elizabeth's diary again. Ethan, where did you find this book? I asked my sleeping son. He woke up and answered, Grandma told me. She said it was hidden behind the bookshelf in her bedroom. I gasped. Elizabeth's bedroom. Indeed, she had always treasured that space where no one else was allowed. Ethan had found the hiding place through his spiritual ability. Grateful for my son's gift, I continued reading the diary. The truth revealed there was beyond imagination. Michael had been after Elizabeth's fortune for years. It seemed even his marriage to me was part of that plan. Elizabeth had noticed his scheme and was secretly gathering evidence. Michael, why would you go this far? I muttered to myself. According to the diary, Michael had planned to murder Elizabeth to inherit her vast estate. And the relatives were complicit in this plan. Sarah, you don't need to know anything. Just sign the papers. Michael's words came back to me. He must have intended to use me to claim legitimacy for the inheritance. On the last page of the diary, Elizabeth had written her thoughts. Sarah, I believe in you and Ethan. Please reveal this truth and restore justice. Wiping away my tears, I steeled my resolve. The next day, I contacted a lawyer and submitted Elizabeth's diary as evidence. I also gave a detailed statement to the police. Things started moving quickly. Michael and the relatives were arrested, and interrogations began. However, they weren't willing to admit their guilt easily. Sarah, what do you know? Michael shouted in court. We did this for the family's happiness. I responded with a firm attitude. Family's happiness. How can killing someone for money lead to happiness? The trial dragged on. Michael and the relatives hired expensive lawyers and desperately resisted. They tried to question Elizabeth's mental state and cast doubt on the credibility of the diary. Elizabeth was showing early symptoms of dementia, they claimed. We shouldn't believe her delusions. But I didn't give up. Ethan's testimony also played a crucial role. While his special ability couldn't be direct evidence in court, it provided important clues that guided the investigation. Grandma is telling the truth, Ethan testified on the stand. I can hear Grandma's voice. The judge and jury were skeptical at first, but gradually they were moved by Ethan's sincerity. Then, decisive evidence was found. A deliberately tampered part was discovered in Elizabeth's car. This scientifically proved that it wasn't an accidental death, but a planned murder. This evidence clearly shows the defendant's guilt, the prosecution argued. The courtroom was in an uproar, and Michael and the others' faces turned pale. In my final argument, I spoke through tears. Elizabeth wasn't a perfect mother-in-law, but she risked her life for justice. We must not let her brave action be in vain. On the day of the verdict, the courtroom was tense. Then the judge's voice rang out. The defendant Michael Thompson and his accomplices are hereby sentenced to life imprisonment. I hugged Ethan and shed tears of relief. The long battle was finally over. "Mom, Grandma is happy," Ethan whispered. I looked up at the sky and spoke to Elizabeth in my heart. "Thank you. We will never forget your courage and love. Our life from now on won't be easy. But now that we've revealed the truth and restored justice, we're ready to take a new step forward." As we descended the courthouse steps, I took a deep breath. The long and painful struggle was finally over. Michael and his accomplices had all been found guilty. Justice for Elizabeth's death had at last prevailed. "Mom, now Grandma can rest in peace, right?" Ethan said in a small voice. I hugged my son and replied, "Yes, Ethan. Thanks to Grandma, we were able to reveal the truth." From that day, our new life began. As a result of the trial, all of Elizabeth's estate was inherited by Ethan and me. However, what was important to us wasn't the money. The greatest gift was being able to live freely and safely. We decided to leave the old house full of memories and start a new life in a different town. We bought a small house, and Ethan started attending a new school. I also began working as a nurse at a local hospital. "Mom, this house feels really comfortable," Ethan said with a smile. "Yes, Ethan. Let's make lots of happy memories here from now on," I replied. Life in the new environment was confusing at first, but gradually we found our rhythm. Ethan made new friends at school, and I threw myself into work. On weekends, we spent time going to nearby parks or watching movies together. One evening, Ethan suddenly spoke to me. "Mom, Grandma talked to me." Surprised, I asked, "What did Grandma say?" Ethan closed his eyes and became quiet, as if listening to a distant voice. Then, he slowly opened his mouth. "Grandma says, Sarah, you're a wonderful mother. Cherish Ethan's special talent. And from now on, don't be afraid to be happy." Hearing those words, tears welled up in my eyes. My relationship with Elizabeth had been complicated, but knowing that she wished for our happiness in the end warmed my heart. "Thank you, Elizabeth," I whispered softly. That night, as I ate dinner with Ethan, we talked about our dreams and hopes for the future. Ethan said he wanted to use his ability to help people when he grew up, and I promised to support his dream with all my heart. As time passed, the painful memories of the past began to fade. In their place, new happy memories piled up. Watching Ethan grow, I too grew as a woman and as a mother. Sometimes, messages from Elizabeth would come through Ethan. They were always encouraging, giving us courage to move forward. The last message came on the day of Ethan's middle school entrance ceremony. "Grandma says, you both have done so well. Keep walking on this happy path in life. I'm always watching over you." Hearing those words, Ethan and I hugged each other and shed tears of joy. We were filled with gratitude for having overcome past sufferings and now living happily. There will surely be difficulties ahead, but we have the strength to overcome them. With Elizabeth's love and courage in our hearts, we continue to walk forward. A new morning begins. The sunlight streaming through the window brightly